Hello and welcome, friends, to our Secular Buddhist Essentials class. It's another Sunday, another beautiful Sunday. Today's a very important and special class. We are talking about the subject of karma, which is a big subject in Buddhism. So I'd like to start with the textbook presentation of karma. So, karma is a concept and belief, as many of you know, that's held by various different religions and ideologies, being presented and understood in many unique ways. This, of course, makes it often a deeply misunderstood subject. Within most traditions, karma is commonly translated as action. However, the Buddha redefines karma as volition, which is intentional choice. He goes on to say, monks, it is volition that I call karma, for having willed, which is the mental act of willing or choosing. For having willed, one then acts by body, speech, and mind. That's a classic quote from the sutras. And in this quote, the Buddha emphasizes that karma is volition. Volition is karma. If you remember from our presentation on free will, we defined volition as our function of choice, right? Our ability to intentionally direct the mind's components towards specific aims. However, although karma and volition are synonymous, the two have slightly different expressions. Volition is understood as a larger umbrella term for all functions of choice, whereas karma, as a subset of volition, is uniquely related to the ethical expression of our intentional choices. Here, the usage of the term ethical doesn't merely pertain to morality, virtue, non virtue, wholesome or unwholesomeness, but it also implies principled choices. So principles meaning it doesn't necessarily have to be have to do with morality, like skillful and unskillful choices or productive and unproductive choices. Meaning, karma is our ability to steer our mental continuum towards favorable and wanted results and away from results we deem unfavorable or unwanted, which is the very mechanism itself of purification and transformation. This is an important distinction because it shows that non ethical, non principled, unintentional, or neutral choices don't constitute karma, for it's our ethical or principled intentions that give karma its karmic weight and karmic consequences. Traditionally, karma is considered to be the single most encompassing element of existence. It's believed to be the very force behind the creation of our physical universe and all its inhabitants, as well as the driving force behind our bondage to samsara. However, for many secular Buddhists, the concept of karma is not seen as a mystical force or cosmic judgment, but instead as a rational account of how our principled intentional choices, operating within the natural law of cause and effect, work to shape our experiences and our lives. It's important to understand that karma, being a force, being a function of ethical choice, can only be produced by a mind. Other phenomena, including planetary events, universal properties, weather, or unintentional actions, operate outside of the realm of karma. Karma is also not static or fixed, but instead exists interdependently in a state of constant change as a living process, a process that is continuously influenced by new conditions, experiences, changing feelings, and views, including interactions with other people's karmic results. Because of its complex nature, the Buddha urged his followers not to become overly preoccupied with contemplating the endless possibilities of karma. In his words, lest you become confused or distracted from your actual practice of attaining enlightenment. Buddhism asserts that karma, which is again ethical, intentional choices, either uh, virtuous or non-virtuous, subsequently lead to karmic actions, which then produce karmic imprints, which are subconscious tendencies, and it produces those upon the mind. Karmic imprints are a kind of mental or emotional residue left behind from our feelings related to our intentions, thoughts, experiences. This in turn leads to karmic results that correspond with the nature of those imprints, with wholesome imprints leading to favorable results, maybe happiness and awakening, and unwholesome imprints leading to unfavorable results, suffering and samsara. Or in simple terms, we simply reap what we sow, a classic line. With this in mind, I'd like to share a classic Buddhist metaphor comparing karmic imprints, to seeds. Every ethical, intentional choice we make plants a karmic imprint or seed in our minds, either wholesome or unwholesome. And just as seeds are laden with potential, yet lay dormant until the right causes and conditions arise, our karmic imprints function in this same way, existing as stored imprints in the mind. Then, when causes and conditions are suitable, these karmic seeds ripen and manifest as active thoughts and habits, influencing and distorting our perceptions, while coloring and shaping the current and future experiences of our lives, eventually ripening as favorable or unfavorable experiences or, or unfavorable. In this scenario, our current life condition are being shaped by previous karmic seeds, while our current karmic choices are planting the seeds that will shape our lives in the future. Karmic imprints are purified by following the Buddha's threefold path. When fully engaged and committed to the threefold path, purification happens as an ongoing and continuous process. Our dharmic orientation, meaning our wholesome principles, commitments, our aims, our precepts, practices, and mindful engagement with the world, is constantly influencing and purifying our mind stream. But they're not the only influences, for we are constantly having to work with influences from our afflictions as well. So, in working with our karma, our aim is to mindfully be aware and support our wholesome influences. That is the practice of purification. When many of us use the term karma, which again is ethical, intentional choice, as shorthand for the full cycle of karma or various elements of the karmic cycle, where something bad happens and they'll say, oh, that's their karma or this is their karma. And, technically it's incorrect. But at one point, I just kind of realized that it's not so much incorrect as it's just kind of shorthand or slang. And and it's understandable, right? And I believe it's also acceptable and a very useful abbreviation. So, meaning in conversation, I think it's perfectly fine to use the term karma for all things related to karmic activities. So, it's not so much that people are using the term wrong, they're just using it as shorthand for the karmic cycle or karmic activity. The full cycle of karma begins with motivation, which is influenced by either the three wholesome roots or the three unwholesome roots, which we talked about in the past. These are subconscious roots that influence all the things we do. Motivation then drives the mind to exercise karma, again, ethical intentional choice, which then leads to karmic acts by body, speech, or mind. The way we feel about our choices and actions then creates these karmic imprints or seeds, which are stored as potential future results. These imprints then lay dormant, usually, until they meet suitable conditions, at which point the karmic imprint ripens and we experience their karmic result. Finally, these karmic results filter back and influence the three sets of roots, thereby reinitiating our karma again. That's the full cycle. So let's try to understand that with an example. How about our favorite example of ice cream? And again, mindset wise, this example is within the realm of healthy and unhealthy choices. Because if we think about it, with karma, there needs to be an ethical intention behind the choice, right? So it's not just eating or not eating ice cream. There has to be, what framework. So we're going to talk about eating ice cream within the framework of healthy and unhealthy choices. So, uh, as as an example to understand this concept, first, I'm sorry, let me make a note real quick. First, past karmic imprints related to ice cream are triggered by current thoughts or events. Maybe somebody mentions ice cream, maybe you see a poster on the wall, whatever it might be. This then leads to the motivation or desire to consume it. This motivation then leads to the intentional decision to start, continue, and finish consuming it. Upon finishing the ice cream, thoughts and emotions that arise pertaining to the consumption, um, uh, which could be anywhere from your feelings of bliss and satisfaction to feeling guilty for indulging in such an unhealthy treat. The residue from these feelings is then imprinted upon the mind, which often lay dormant until they meet suitable causes and conditions. Then at some point, the karmic imprint ripens and we experience these karmic results. These results may manifest as an ongoing craving or greed for ice cream, or possibly an aversion to it because you're committed to healthier choices. Other karmic results could be weight gain. That's clearly one. Or how about a drained bank account from overindulging? You spend all your money on ice cream. Finally, these karmic imprints and results filter back to our underlying roots, enforcing either our wholesome or unwholesome tendencies. Therefore, thereby reinitiating the karmic cycle once again. However, karma is not a form of determinism, I'm sorry. We are not prisoners of our karmic imprints. We don't have to eat ice cream every time it's placed in front of us. We have free will, according to Buddhism, and we can choose not to follow or act upon the influences of our karmic imprints. Karma is contrary to the ideas of determinism, destiny, fate, coincidence, or luck. Instead, karmic imprints should be understood as probable potentialities, right? Karma is always changing, never static. They should be seen as potentialities, probable potentialities, the probable potential for future results. An example that illustrates this is, imagine a person with a karmic propensity for anger. And what we mean by that is they've had experiences in the past, whatever the reason, it's put these karmic seeds of becoming angry. It could have been that they role modeled off of a parent who is always angry, and they just think that's how you behave. Karmic imprints can be very subtle. Some of them can be mere habit. Um, but this person, even though they have this karmic propensity for anger, they also had the good fortune to marry a wonderful and kind spouse who helped them to work with their anger. And then when that person's karmic propensity for anger arises, the results for that will be far different because of the influence of their spouse, right? This demonstrates how influences from others and our environment have an enormous effect on how karmic results unfold, and how the cycle of karma as a living process is interdependent at every stage of its development, affirming, that we are the architects of our future and not victims of our past. And that through engaging in wiser choices and more skillful actions, we can radically improve the quality of our lives. Therefore, when assessing our lives, we shouldn't worry about what past karma imprints may unfold, but instead, we should be focusing on what karmic results are currently being created. Oh, that was a beautiful piece. Karma is also, the cycle of karma can be understood as the engine or momentum that drives our lives. This is a especially favorite concept of karma that I enjoy. So we can think about karma as this engine or momentum that drives our lives, while also being the force that determines the quality, character, and flavor of our lives. A momentum created by our ethical, intentional choices. Here, our stored wholesome karmic imprints can be seen as the collective fruits of our efforts and accomplishments. Those things we have put effort into attaining, like education, skills, talents, things that can be utilized for our benefit. But this also includes the wholesome connections and relationships we've developed throughout our lives, both personally and professionally. Connections and relationships that foster opportunity and security. In this scenario, productive and skillful choices, those things you're actively investing, you've actively invested your constructive effort into, right? Those things you've actively invested your constructive efforts into. Boy, that's a mouthful. Maybe I need to shorten that. They naturally create a momentum towards favorable results. while unproductive, unskillful actions create unfavorable results. There's another quality in karma expression, and this lies in the Buddhist notion of karma, and it's the idea of merit. Although being nearly synonymous with wholesome karmic imprints, there is a subtle difference between the two. Wholesome karmic imprints are seen as a broader term, whereas merit is understood as a subset of wholesome karma. Merit is more focused on the noticeable conditions of your life and path, including gaining favorable rebirth, uh, health, wealth, spiritual attainments. It's also more related to the purification of our mental stream, whereas wholesome karmic imprints handle the bigger job of transcending the need for merit at all, while paving our path to awakening. In other words, merit can be thought of as our stockpile of goodness generated through our good deeds. It's that which makes our life in this world pleasant and spiritual practice possible. The Buddha taught that merit can be dedicated and shared, often referred to as the transfer of merit. This is not a metaphysical transfer of your wisdom realization or attainments, which is impossible. It's more related to the sharing of your own wholesome attitudes and skills, often simply acts of generosity, uh, shared supports, shelter, protection, goodwill, friendship, um, teachings, or good counsel. It can simply be the directing your wholesome thoughts and intentions towards others as well. In SBT, we call this shining, letting your goodness, joy, equanimity, and inner purity shine forth in order to lift others. This in turn helps to inspire others to eventually work out their own liberation. Isn't that pretty? Well, on that note, how about if we summarize? So, the Buddha defined karma again as volition, or more specifically, ethical volition, meaning ethical intentional choice, which is our ability to steer our mental continuum, mental stream away from ignorance, afflictions, and samsara, and towards clarity, happiness, and nirvana. We mentioned that for many secular Buddhists, the concept of karma is not seen as a mystical force or cosmic judgment, but instead as simply a rational account of how our ethical, intentional choices, operating within the natural law of cause and effect, shape our experiences in our lives. Karma is the engine or momentum that drives our lives, while also being the force that determines its quality, character, and flavor. Seen as a momentum, karma is not static or fixed, but instead is a living process, allowing for free will and the ability to choose whether or not to act upon our karmic imprints. This once again affirms that we are the architects of our future and not victims of our past. That through engaging in wiser choices and more skillful actions, we can radically improve the quality of our lives. The topic of karma will be explored further throughout the text. Um, Karma itself pertains to a lot of other Buddhist topics. So, and between us, what I'm giving here is more of a conventional and functional understanding of karma. Uh, at very high levels of practice, the ideas change a little bit when we're talking about final liberation. So I'd like to share one last thing. I have an ending paragraph that I decided to add to each one of the concepts. Um, and it's entitled, How is this beneficial to my life? Right. And I remember having friends in the past that uh, would the compliment they always gave was that I always made it clear, and they appreciated that in my teachings. But they criticized other teachers that would go on, and you're left with the idea, how does this have any relevance to my life? So, how does this benefit my life? Well, I believe that realizing karma as the driving force and momentum of our lives is possibly the most important concept in actively improving the quality of our existence. Understood properly as our engine of purification, karma is seen as the very vehicle of awakening itself. Short and sweet. What do you think of that? Oh, thank you. Any last questions before we end today's teaching? I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I had a whole lot of fun. Let's end today's teaching with our altruistic affirmation. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is the source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks everybody for joining me. I hope you got a little better insight into karma. We'll see everybody next time. Bye bye.